So here's another quote. What is essential to make intellectual freedom serve its function as the prime mover of intellectual progress is not that everybody may be able to think or write anything, but that any cause or idea may be argued by somebody, right? So just to go back a little bit to what Kevin said and just putting a fine point on the section that we read verbatim. We read that section verbatim because it needed to be read. And there is this stuff afterwards where Hayek is bringing this chapter to a conclusion, right? He is bringing it home. So he lays out, here's the need, here's the how, and then here's the outcome. And so what he's saying here is that these ideas, people need to be able to argue whatever it is that they land on. It could be wrong, it could be right, but there needs to be that diversity of opinion and viewpoints. And skepticism is part of that. So long as dissent is not suppressed, which it is, again, just ask yourself, by the way, do you feel like dissent is a thing that's suppressed or not in our current day and age, right? Just ask yourself that. Dissent against any of these things, are they suppressed or not?
If you ask yourself the question and you find, well, I don't think dissent is particularly suppressed in this particular arena. I don't think when a NFL player, a basketball player, ends up arguing that he doesn't believe police are acting in their best interest, well, that dissent's totally okay with. So what direction is he dissent going in? Is an important question to ask yourself as well.
Define dissent. No, that's good,
Yeah.
Kevin. That's really good. Yeah. So again, I think I was talking to someone the other day, and I think it was Carter and with Unsafe Spaces said, I don't know what happened with the election in 2020, but the fact that I'm not allowed to talk about it tells me everything I need to know. Mm. And so again, it's not necessarily what is being advocated for, but it's like, okay, what am I not allowed to say and why am I not allowed to say that? Question mark. Anyway, so long as dissent is not suppressed, there will always be some who will query or ask or question the ideas ruling their contemporaries and put new ideas to the test of argument and propaganda. That's the scientific method. This interaction of individuals possessing different knowledge and different views is what constitutes the life of thought. So let's make a real important distinction here. Different knowledge and different views is not the same as my truth and your truth. Different knowledge is Isaac Newton saying, I observed this thing, and here's what I'm saying. Another person saying, well, I don't know if I've observed that. Tell me about it. So different knowledge is not, well, I think up is down. And the other person saying, well, I think down is up. That's not different knowledge or different perspectives. This is just what he's talking about here is literally the scientific method and how you use, like you said, that puzzle of different viewpoints to conform to reality. It's not my truth, your truth. And what Hayek is getting at here is that the ability to just any idea can be argued by anyone. That's the life of thought. That's the marketplace of ideas in its truest form, right? Which is not what we live in currently. But that's an important distinction to make. So
yeah. I think here, he highlights the idea of this intellectual freedom. It's essential, but as he stated in this quote here and before, it's essential not because everyone utilizes it. We see that people freely choose not to use intellectual freedom, which is a freedom in itself. You can say like, all right, it's not for me, independent thought, not for me. I'm just going to stick over here at the group thing.
Hard pass.
Yeah. Right. But because it allows any idea to be argued by someone, it's like there's a good idea out there somewhere and you got to find it, right? Like the truth is out there and you just got to find it. You got to spend time finding it, and not allowing intellectual freedom just doesn't allow people to find that good idea, to find the truth that is out there. And,
right.
Suppressing that, again, you could argue again that our intellectual freedom is a prerequisite to all other freedoms. If you can't think for yourself, you can't think independently, well, then all your other freedoms, right, as it's probably going to be redefined, are completely useless to you, right? So I think it's important to establish that you must be able to think independently. And if people are starting to control your thoughts, like you said, the guy said, if I don't know what happened during the election, but the fact that I'm not able to question it publicly is a problem. The fact that we can't think out loud or even getting to the point where we can't even think in our own houses because people are going to be, you're afraid to offend someone who could do whatever, getting to the point where you could probably get reported for some stuff for wrongthink. I think we're heading in that direction.
Did you see what happened in
It's going to suppress
Australia?
everything. Yeah. Well, I mean,
The
there's a bunch of stuff. I think so.
Fair enough.
On a little
The
side topic,
guy.
I think Afghanistan is sort of fortunate for the mainstream media, because it gets to not
100%.
allow them to not talk about what's happening in Australia.
It gets them well, not they wouldn't anyway.
Yeah.
Although CNN did cover it, and they're
Mhm.
like, on Australia's highest peak of COVID-19. Look at all these. So even then, their coverage is skewed. Um, and they gave equal coverage to, of course, the riots last summer, and then the post-election victory parties in the streets. But uh, they covered them the exact same, totally unbiased. But no, you said anyone could turn someone in about the guy who his wife. This is in West Australia. The guy who his wife said that he had some kind of breakdown because he didn't agree with her about the severity of COVID for his kids, and the police came and arrested him and took him to basically a mental ward. And he made a video of it. My friend in West Australia, I kid you not, she goes, "That's right down the street from where I live. That's where she got her vaccination shots at." So she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's literally right over there." But he's like, I thought my loving wife of 15 years, but because he had expressed any doubt, he's like, I'm just not sure about some of these measures and some of this stuff. That was enough.
Mm.
She turned him into the authorities, and the police come and get him. And so he posted a few videos the night that he got brought in there, and he's like, I'm going to meet with a lawyer tomorrow, da da da. And then it went radio silent. He's like, he relayed this information to someone else, and he's like, the lawyer told me I need to keep a lot of this on the DL because I'm trying to get custody of my kids. Afterwards I can talk about it. But yeah, I mean, that's serious crap, man. That's serious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, you have that with COVID. I think you have that a lot with, the transgender and kids, that you're not allowed to tell your kids, maybe this isn't the right option for you, or maybe you should wait and be able to experience a bit more things before you make this drastic decision, before your brains even properly fused together. So it is happening in some capacity here already. And
100%.
That's absolutely terrifying. That you can't have control over
And
kids.
evil.
Yeah.
And evil.
Oh, evil for sure. You can't have control over kids. You can't have control over your own body, and now you can't have control over your own thoughts. So this is the terrifying world that Hayek was warning us about. But of course, America, Australia, they could never turn into Nazi Germany, right?
Yeah.
So we have this last quote here, and I actually, I really like this one because it hits on a topic that I don't know. I don't think he hits on for the rest of the book, but I think it's an important little note here about humility and hubris. So the quote is, quote, "The tragedy of collectivist thought is that while it starts out to make reason supreme, it ends by destroying reason because it misconceives the process on which the growth of reason depends. It may indeed be said that it is the paradox of all collectivist doctrine that its demand for conscious control or conscious planning, that they necessarily lead to the demand that the mind of some individual should rule supreme, while only the individualist approach to social phenomena makes us recognize the super individual forces which guide the growth of reason. Individualism is thus an attitude of humility before the social process and of tolerance to other opinions, and is the exact opposite of the intellectual hubris, which is at root of the demand for comprehensive direction of the social process." So I think, he starts out here that the problem with the reason, well, he doesn't say this. This is my opinion here, and this is how I mostly argue against the Ayn Rand objectivists. Is the problem with the reason is you can literally reason yourself into anything and any position, and even into positions that end up destroying reason itself. In order to maintain our reasoning capacity, we must bring a humble attitude to the floor and recognize that we could be wrong in our assumptions and positions. That's how you maintain reason, is by saying, I might be wrong here. And it's this intellectual hubris that makes us believe that we can power through whatever obstacle lies between us and our end goals. And we abandon reason when we take that route, when we believe we can just power through those obstacles. And we hurt a lot of people when we go down that road. And Nazi Germany is just one big, although relatively small compared to China thereafter, and even the Soviet Union, of how many people get hurt when you go down that road. And I think Hayek identifies something real important here, that when we show humility, when we act as if we're trying to find truth instead of fitting something into this box that we've already referred to it today as my truth, we can start heading down the road of serfdom. We can start going down these really, really bad paths, but we can quickly identify our faults and our mistakes and our capacity for evil, and make sure we take the next exit off the road to serfdom, to the road to liberty, and course correct before any heads start to roll. So I think having that humility, having that one, respect for the people who kind of built this stuff before you, and understanding, okay, I have this relatively liberal platform because of what all these people did, thought, and sacrificed for me to get here. I'm going to respect them and understand why we're here. And then when I take something and I find that there's some problems, I'm making mistakes, it seems like this, is heading off the rails. It seems like people with this plan that I have that is going to help people is starting to hurt people. I need to have the humility to admit that I might be wrong. And it's the problem with
that's
a lot of these
being subject to truth, though,
yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, right. But I mean, you have to understand that if there are obstacles between you and your end goals, maybe those obstacles are there for a reason. Identify those reasons, and then you can course correct to a better system. Hopefully, it's the people who don't have that, what he calls intellectual hubris, that says, I'm staying on the path. I got to power through. You got to break a couple eggs to make an omelet, right? And that's the way they view this: is the ends justify the means, and they don't worry about all the heads. Again, the heads literally will roll along the way to get to their end goals, because they don't have that humility.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the Jurassic Park quote that we gave last time. Do you want to read that? Let's read that. Let's go back and read that. Yeah. Almost there. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
The lack of humility before nature that's being displayed here staggers me. Don't you see the danger inherent in what you're doing here? You have a power that is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun. If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the power you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and you were so preoccupied with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think if you should. And that's a little bit of a distillation of the total quote by Ian Malcolm there. But the point is that the lack of humility is what drives this ideology. I was trying to find, of course, I searched for Keynes quote, "We believe in our own," on Google, and it's bringing me up. It's like the list of the most inspirational quotes by John Maynard Keynes. And I was trying to find the one that Soul references in Knowledge and Decisions, where John Maynard Keynes was basically like, we believed in our own, the sufficiency of our own goodness. Essentially, that's not the quote, but that's the general gist of it. Is we believe in the sufficiency of our own goals and our own instincts, and that was enough. We didn't need anything else. We literally were willing to reject all of human history and say, well, we think we're right, and we're good with that. And just the hubris there. And these are the people that are building this giant machine. These are the ones forging the ring and going, yeah, it's fine. Nothing will go wrong. And like you said, heads will start rolling.
Yeah. So when you get to
it's
control,
the only place it'll go.
Yeah, but when you control all the avenues of information, stuff can go wrong, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
So it's power reinforcing power, and allowing them to really maintain it, because one, they believe they can, they believe they ought to, and two, so many people are willing to go along with it. I think we could really dive a lot more into how this power keeps growing because of the institutions that are supposed to hold them to account, right? The mainstream media, the free press that we have, so-called, is supposed to be holding the powerful to account and making sure
Fourth estate. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what they're calling
that
it.
they're staying above board, and they don't do that anymore. And there's a lot of reasons as to why they don't do that anymore.
On
But
purpose. There, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. There
actively,
is,
yes,
yeah, a very specific rationale behind that. 100%.
yeah. And I think that's something we'd have to break down for another day. But um, yeah, to not have any humility going into this, and being able to just truck through and not worry about the bodies along the way. That is how you repeat the mistakes of the 20th century, even though they're history book. We understand how this happened. Hayek lays the case out here really well. I'm sure plenty of people have also done that, and there's people warning us. We have immigrants from Cuba warning us, like this stuff is happening. We have Sunmi Park warning us from North Korea, saying I'm getting the feeling, at my university, the same feeling I had, in North Korea. So the people are here to tell us. The canaries are keeling over, if you will, warning us that we are headed down this road that we ought not to head down if we want to keep and to conserve, our liberal founding. But not enough people right now seem to have noticed that the canaries are dead. So
And also just think about the hubris required to say, I can distort information. There's no consequences to me just only filtering through the information I want people to hear, and that the ends justify the means, including in the distribution of truth, of facts. There are people getting banned off of Twitter. I swear to God, people are going to be like, if this is the first episode they're watching, going to be like, so there's a sane guy and some crazy asshole. But it's like people were getting banned off of Twitter for saying, it seems like these vaccines aren't working as we were promised. It's like, that's objectively true. The New York Times is literally running pieces about how, people are worried about the efficacy of these things as these breakthrough cases are emerging. About Israel was the model because everyone's vaccinated. Now they have the biggest surge in cases around the world. And people were worried about how they're not working as we thought. But if you say that, and you're not the New York Times, and you say that on Twitter, then you'll get banned for a week for misinformation. And it's like, that's crazy. So the hubris required to be like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. The plan, tunnel vision, the plan, is, as Ian Malcolm says, it staggers me, absolutely staggers me, for people to think there's no consequences, or even to not even go that far to think there will be no consequences, because that infers that they thought about the possibility of them being there, and then they just drew the conclusion they won't be. That's not the same as someone saying, I'm not even interested in whether or not they exist. And that's where I think a lot of these people are. So we can do our summary here of the chapter, if it's even possible. So the chapter 11, the chapter about the morally and intellectually bankrupt nature of collectivism, particularly when it comes to the distribution, or not even the distribution, it's the adherence to truth, the submission to truth. And a lot of that is just like, we have to be submissive to it. James Lindsay wrote a book called Everybody's Wrong About God, I think in 2015 is when it was published. Notion that I think is something I've thought about before even hearing about the summary of it, but where it's like, he's like, the way for a person to incorporate religious worldview, even if they're an atheist, is to substitute the concept of God for truth. And it's like, look, I'm going to submit to whatever's true, regardless of my feelings about it. And he's like, this is how believers, how Christians or whatever religious people view their relationship with God. It's like, look, I'm ultimately submissive to this, regardless of how I feel about it. That's what I have to be subservient to, is reality. And I think that's true. And so that's what Hayek's writing about here, is these people who will be interested in that. They're actually completely willing to kill it and pervert that. So the first part, competing propaganda is not the same as hegemonic propaganda. It's not just about being lied to. People also have to be isolated from truth. So competing information, competing even if it's propaganda, Coke or Pepsi, take the Pepsi challenge, whatever. Um, Anything that falls under the rubric of you are getting a different perspective than the one we want you to hold, that can't be allowed, right? People, I read a book once to get in on their religious vein once more. That said that we often consider original sin being Adam and Eve in the garden, but actually sin entered the world once a perspective or a view or a will outside the one that God holds existed. So he said actually original sin can be attributed to Lucifer. The minute Lucifer had a will or a thought or a desire that deviated from the will of God, that's when sin entered. And so a sinless existence is one in which only God's will is what exists. These people hold that same view. Whether or not you think the Bible is real or bunk or whatever, that's fine. But the biblical worldview is the will of God is the only one that's acceptable. If the safest place I think this is a quote from maybe Jonathan Edwards or Spurgeon, but the safest place to be is smack dab in the middle of the will of God. And so these people have the same worldview as the God of the Bible. The only place to be is smack dab in the middle of our plan, in the will of our plan. Anything outside of that is sin, is missing the mark. And so we want to create this hegemony of propaganda. It's not just that we want to lie to you. It's not just that we want to push our worldview and our will on you, but it's also that we want to make sure that you're not exposed to any other possibility. There's not going to be, anything else here because that might get you to consider something outside of the supremacy and the perfection of our plan. So it's not just about being lied to, it's about being isolated from the truth. And again, what's the definition of hegemony? Ask yourself why NBC, NPR, CNN, ABC, Washington Post, New York Times, Huffington Post, Vox, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the CDC, the FDA, all these institutions all agree with each other. And that's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. They all agree with each other. You can't have an outside perspective.
Yeah. So the second point that we wanted to highlight here is the development of the moral code, which is established by a totalitarian regime to kind of build these new moral standards that must appeal to us. They have to appeal to the population because they have to believe it's theirs, right? So these new standards must seem like they're standards that were held or ought to have been held this whole time. Again, it's telling Christians that Jesus was a socialist, hippie, pacifist, and that this new idea of socialism to them has actually been a belief that they've held in their hearts the whole time. They just didn't know about it, right? So what they do is they're destructive of all moral views because they undermine one of the foundations of all morals, which is the sense of and the respect for truth. Like you said before, once you get rid of that, then moral codes effectively really don't matter. But again, like we said before, truth is this measuring stick of where you're at in morality. Once you get rid of truth, once you get rid of reality itself, moral systems are truly irrelevant.
Yep. Yeah, because it's all based on whatever truth or whatever ethical code, moral code the planner gives to you. Our system of information must be corrupted to silence dissent, kind of in the vein of what you just talked about. The probable effect, and this is, think about what is the hierarchy of values of these institutions? What's the hierarchy of values of the New York Times or the CDC these days? God, it scares the shit out of me. The probable effect of the people's loyalty to the system becomes the only criterion. I would say it becomes the first criterion for deciding whether a particular piece of information is to be disseminated or suppressed. So if you have a hierarchy of values of this system, it's like at the top is, does it support the plan or not? That's the first criterion. And then after that is everything else. So if it does support the plan, then they'll put it out there. Go think about, again, back to Jon Stewart with the lab leak stuff. No, it doesn't contradict anything now. There's no harm to our plan or to the narrative to put it out there. So now I can talk about this thing that I've known for a year But now I can. And so the point is, and I did a thread about this on Twitter yesterday, where it's like the hierarchy of values of these institutions is the legitimation and maintenance of their power and their supremacy. That's the first thing that matters. And then after that is whatever that institution was originally created for.
Yep.
And so if, and the example I gave, so I made this thread in the context of a buddy texted me and he's like, CNN is turning on Biden. What's going on? I'm like, no. And one of the examples I gave my friends, I was like, okay, think about it like this. You know how sometimes in movies where the bad guy and the good guy team up, the bad guy might help the good guy temporarily. We were talking about the dumbass Resident Evil movies the other night. And, I think at the end of the fifth one, like Wesker is like, yeah, and just wanting to help out.
Yeah.
The bad guy didn't become good. It's just that his interests temporarily aligned in that specific instance with helping the good guy. He didn't become good. So whenever we see these institutions doing things, we're like, well, maybe they're doing what they're supposed to do. No, they're doing what they're supposed to do in that moment because it either aligns with their goal or it doesn't conflict with their goal. And so that's why. But either way, the point is that the hierarchy of values, once these institutions are infected by this ideology of collectivism, as Hayek outlines here, once they're infected with that, all that matters is, does it support the plan or not? That's it. And then after that, it's like, well, if there's no conflict here, then we can talk about it. But what's missing from that is truth is not the thing. Moral virtue or value is not the thing, as we've traditionally understood it. Yeah. So that's a big problem. That's a big problem.
I think we're distilled. We have four bullet points here, and the fourth one just dives into those institutions we're talking about, but we probably could have one here, and it's the end of truth, right? Because it all relates back to that. That's the most critical feature here. But the fourth bullet point we have is the foundation of the institutions. What you're talking about: science, history, law, education must be redirected to serve the purposes of the plan. Right? We talk about all these German cats. Like you find German cats in all of these because they're no longer. It's not about science. It's about the appropriate science according to the plan. It's not about history. It's about the history that we want to highlight, and a little bit of revisionist play in there to fit the plan. It's the law. It's the critical theory version of the law. It's education. It's only this type of education, the hegemonic education that builds activists for the plan instead of helping kids become adults prepared for the real world for an actual reality that they're going to inherit. And none of these things, science, history, law, education, none of these have the original essence or their original purpose anymore. None of these are
Marxist-Leninist, theory and surgery.
Yeah. It's all there to serve the plan. I know you have the German word here, Gleichstellung. How do you say it?
Gleichstellung.
I was basically right there. Everything must be the same. Everything fits for the same purpose. It's all organized and coordinated in a certain way to make sure that it all serves the plan in the end. And to do that, you have to get rid of truth in order to do that successfully.
Yep. And again, truth being one of the bedrock, vital, foundational aspects of morality and a just society. You have to get rid of truth. So another way to frame that is to say truth and morality, objective truth, right? And morality, as we understand it, is in direct conflict with what these people are wanting to do, right?
Yep.
That is terrifying. That they are openly admitting that. I think we were talking about this the other night where it might have been me talking to Bentham, I don't know, but it might have been you and I, but where I mentioned about how you don't need, I think this is you and I, how you don't need convincing when it comes to reality. People aren't constantly in your face when it comes to reality. Like, don't forget, gravity exists. Don't forget, the New York Times, gravity still exists. Gravity's out there, guys. You don't need a full court press, intellectually, whenever it comes to your senses, whenever it comes to reality. you don't need to be constantly reminded of reality. It's just there. Reality doesn't require maintenance, is the other way I would say that. Is that outside of things that are maybe new discoveries, for example, like, oh, hey, this berry's poisonous, something like that. Like outside of that, reality doesn't require maintenance. Like we just conform to it naturally. But if there's this constant upkeep of something, it's like, okay, why? What's going on here? And that's what planning does. It's this constant upkeep of the narrative, the plan, because that plan and that narrative is often in total contradiction of reality and morals and what is actually morally good. That's why they have to have this new sensibility, this new reality, this new freedom. I think that's earlier in the chapter when he says, the new freedom is actually the freedom of the majority to impose their will on the individual. We have to have these new things, right? And reality doesn't require persuasion. It just you conform to it because it just is, right? So there's no CNN headline "Fire still hot."
Yeah,
right. So
there's no NPR a headline saying gravity exists, but there is probably an NPR headline that says gravity's racist.
That's right. Yeah. New study raises doubts about the racial neutrality of gravity. Right.
Does not allow white men to jump as high.
Terry Gross, I'm sure, had a very riveting piece about it. NPR and Bernie Sanders are the two things that I get the most pissed off at, and a lot of that is because I'm like, I can't believe I thought you sons of bitches knew what you're talking about. The third one might be Robert Reich. I used to think his documentary Inequality for All was like brilliant, but this is again back in my time when I thought roads were socialism, so that reminder of, and that's the reality part where I'm like, okay, now that I understand reality and I look back at the views I used to have, then I'm like, holy shit, those are so out of the realm of reality, and it really, it's like, I cannot believe that I was able to exist that far removed from truth. But that's what this thing does. That's the glacial tongue. We're all swimming in the same red, in this case, red sauce. That's what Chris Rufo is. It's not a whitewashing of history. It's a red washing of history. I think that's a brilliant observation.
Yeah. I mean, look at it on the bright side. At least you weren't 15, still believed in Santa, right?
I suppose that's true. I'd almost rather that be the case.
Right. I'll take Santa any day.
There's not genocidal implications of that, to my knowledge.
True that. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know this is going to be a bit longer than most of them.
We still have 2 pages left, man.
Ooh, let's do it. I think, it's going to be all the twist joke.
Yep.
This one's going to be a little bit longer, and also it's probably going to release a little bit later on Monday. We're recording this very, very late on a Sunday, so to process this stuff and get it out there to you guys, it's going to take a bit more time, but it should be out on Monday. Should be a problem.
Well, one more time.
Yes.
Why is it so important that we're okay? It's like, okay, this is going to be maybe 3 parts, whatever. This chapter, again, you can tell me if you disagree or not, maps onto our current reality so cleanly. And it lays bare the nature of what we're looking at whenever it comes to these that we're encountering and going, what is going on here? And Hayek gives that articulation that I mentioned at the beginning, where it's like, let me put words to what you're seeing. Glacial tongue, bro.
It's like
and so this is vital to understand.
Well, it's like the previous chapter, why the worst get on top. It's all something we know. It's all something we see, the worst get on top, but we don't always put it together in our heads why that happens.
Yep.
This chapter, just like, we mentioned at the beginning, when truth is hidden from you, you have no baseline to establish, a relative truth compared to what objective truth is. And that's why it's hard to see when truth gets taken away. It's not easy to identify. They wouldn't have to make a full, ironically, I think this is the shortest chapter in the book, but it was the most intense. But the reason that's important, the reason that we felt the need to expand on it, is it's not as obvious as, you think it is. You think, it's not always easy to tell when someone's lying. Well, imagine that you don't only walk into, a place where one person's lying, you walk into a place where literally everyone's lying. The signs are lying, everything
Yeah.
is wrong and upside down. That is the reality that
It's
we're
maddening.
inheriting today.
It's maddening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you start to recognize, everything that is so untrue, and these screens that keep out inconvenient truths but allow in some of the stuff that reinforce narratives, it makes you a little paranoid. It makes you think that you're a conspiracy theorist because you're going so against the grain. You think you're going so against the grain until you realize, oh, there's actually a large community of people that actually understand that these institutions that are supposed to be providing this truth, helping find truth, are doing the exact opposite now. And then we need to find a way to
Totally
correct before we lose everything.
There's, I mean, two things there. I mean, we're already over on time, so whatever. But one, think about Yeonmi Park describing what North Korea was like. That's why I mentioned that earlier, where it's like, if you don't think this is sustainable, think again. She said that she didn't even have a connection to the value of human life until her first kid was born, because they were taught their lives don't matter. Love, there was no concept of love or anything like that.
The most horrifying thing to her that came out the interview, especially Jordan Peterson, is that she didn't feel anything when people around her died.
Yep.
Like her father dying. She didn't feel bad because her father died. She felt bad because she didn't feel anything. And that's built into you through social conditioning.
Yeah. The fact that is so doable, that they can do it by, if you cut people off so efficiently from truth. And that's where, like you said, it's, you said you feel crazy, and it's maddening to go, wait a second. There's this great collection of little shorts called the Animatrix that came out maybe in 2008, 2007, something like that. No, it was before that. It was maybe 3 or 2 actually. And one of the themes of that, I think that this is in one of the stories, is that whenever people start to become aware of the matrix, and especially if they become sufficiently convinced that things are not right, they will self-awaken from the matrix, and it's a huge shock to their body. A lot of times they'll die because it's so completely jarring to their sensibilities. And there's a lot there. I mean, Carlin and I have talked about this, coming from the left, of it takes years. It took me years to go, okay, wait a second. What? Oh, wait, my view on this was that, oh my gosh, and getting those alternative perspectives. And it is absolutely, I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I don't even remember what I was thinking about it. It might've been, I was thinking about talking to my brother about something, and how, like, once you get into these concepts, like, it's one thing to be like, okay, NPR also sucks. But once you get into the concepts of like the cathedral and how a lot of these things work, and just how bad the situation is, it is, you just can't start out there with people. You just can't, because it's so like, I had a buddy, the very first episode that I ever did on YouTube or on anywhere was originally going to be me and a friend, actually, who was getting into the stuff and thinking about it. And he was listening to, it was when 12 Rules came out, and he was in Jordan Peterson and stuff. And we record, so the first episode I did on guns and everything, I actually I don't think I have it still, but there's a recording of that, of me and my friend actually talking about those things. And afterwards, he was like, okay, I don't think I actually want to do that. And then I remember a while later, maybe, I don't think it was quite a year, it might've been a year, talking to him, and he was like, I quit paying attention to that stuff. It's just easier. I'm happier now. And he had completely been like, he had started to go down the road of like, okay, something's fucked. And then he was like, yeah, this is stressful, and just punched out and said, I'm not. And then I want to say, and by the way, this is one of the smartest people I know. I want to say this was maybe a month or 2 ago. I was talking to him about vaccine mandates and passports. And he was like, why would that be a big deal? So it was just full circle, just completely full circle.
Who's the character in the Matrix? Is his name Cypher, the guy who wants
Cypher was
to?
Yeah. Cypher was the one at the beginning who was like, this steak tastes delicious. Yeah.
But he's the one who wants to go back in the Matrix. He wants to.
Yeah, he wants to forget.
Back, but he wants to not even remember the realization that there is a Matrix. He wants to be ignorant. Like he voluntarily wants to be ignorant because he believes he'll be happier that way. So that's literally the perfect parallel, I think, for that.
100%. And that's my buddy. Again, one of the smartest people I know, hands down. One of the reasons why we even connected in high school, this is one of my oldest friends also, was over, it was a small rural town. It doesn't take much to find another person who can, at least have a little bit higher level of thinking about stuff. And so, but he started to go down that, but it's that jarring is my point, is it is that. And so that's one of the things that makes us, back to the Brandolini's law thing. It's not just about the information itself, but it's the people, right? Like you have to have an order of magnitude more of people who understand this stuff a lot of times to combat even just one person who is just, and advocating, how many sane people do you need to counteract the consequences of Brian Stelter, right? How many Dan Crenshaws do you need? And I'm not even saying Dan Crenshaw is that great, but I would say he's at least 7 out of 10. How many Dan Crenshaws do you need to counteract one Maxine Waters? Good God, right? How many Ron DeSantis's do you need to counteract one? What's her Gretchen Whitmer? Or Andrew Cuomo.
It says you're cutting out a little bit, and I thought you were going to say Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, how many Ron DeSantis do you need to counteract one Greta? I think it's actually Thunberg, because words, and I don't give a shit about that girl's name. Anyway, go to school. But it's an overwhelming problem, but you have to at least start with an understanding of the problem. That's one of the things I love about Hayek, is that you can't solve a problem. You can't even attack a problem if you don't understand the nature of it.
Yep.
And he's at least helping people understand the nature of the problem. And that's one of the things we talked about here today, hopefully. So sorry, I know we were starting to wrap up and then kind of went down that rabbit hole, but.
No, all good stuff. Well, this would be the end of chapter 11. Chapter 11. 12, I don't remember the name of
it's the socialistic roots of Nazism, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, so there seems to be a couple of chapters here where he gets in the very specifics on certain things, but
the one after that, the Totalitarians Among Us, I believe is what it's called, is pretty great too.
Yeah, but we're going to try to keep it going every Monday. There's going to be now 4 left after chapter 11, so we're going to be excited to wrap it up, and then we'll see what we'll do for the big finale. But I still haven't counted the hours we've invested into this, or at least it's just recorded time. But all I can say is if you just listen to the audiobook, it'll be about like a fifth of the length. But
easily.
Yeah. So we try to do the best we can at bringing our own highbrow intellectual content to the book. So
fucking losers.
Yeah, you'll get that joke if you listen to our live stream.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. But man,
guy with a lot of letters. He was one of the people in the live chat, by the way. He actually,
I think so. Yeah. I saw the first series of letters of the same, but I don't think it was the exact same handle.
Yeah.
But that guy actually, yeah. So I think it might have been. But the reason we got to see that guy, and the reason that we saw that comment is because he is in locals. So he's want to comment on one of our stuff, and that's the best way to get this podcast, all of our other written and video and podcast work, and just join our community. So make sure to join Truman at the Return to Reason community at returntoreason.locals.com. Also, obviously, you can find them on YouTube. Might be watching it here. Just search Return to Reason. You can search them on ThinkSpot, Return to Reason, and also on Medium at Return to Reason for the written content. And go on Twitter and follow them at My Mundane Mind. There we go. At My Mundane Mind. I know I was almost going to give Deb Billman's handle there. It's got reason in it. Come on.
I made an insomnia chick.
Yes. It's an awesome name. Free plug for Deb there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and And same for Kevin. Go to engineeringpolitics.locals.com, ENG_politics on Twitter, and Medium. Again, he's kind of like me, where the name is going to be at all those places. Engineering Politics, Medium. He actually updates his ThinkSpot, unlike me. He updates his Grinder, unlike me. And so find him on all of those places. That's right.
My location is always on.
That's correct. 24/7. And YouTube as well. Oh my God. And so, yeah. But find him on YouTube and Twitter, especially because he's criminally under subbed on both of those places. You broke 100 on Twitter. I noticed that the other day. I don't know if that's
Twitter. I've been way over 100 for a while.
Maybe it was YouTube. You broke 100 on the other day. Okay. Yeah. So good job. So get him up to 200, folks, by the way, and then 3 after that.
I'm rolling in the dough in those YouTube dollars.
That's right. The YouTube bucks. So that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. Like, share, subscribe. If you find this valuable, please especially do that. Leave your comments, questions, critiques. Of course, don't do the critiques. We're not interested in truth here, just what supports the narrative. And that is it. We will
give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Grinder, everywhere you can find us.
That's right. 25/8. So, all right. We'll check you next time. Peace.